in it. We'll just have a start today and see where we go. And you know, it's interesting. If you look at the screen, it says here, "What is the will of God?" So I think we hear these a lot. You know, God's purpose and God's will. And my first question is, and I don't know if you guys have ever had this question, but my question is, what is the difference between the two? When do we use God's will, and when do we use God's purpose? I mean, like they're supposedly the same thing, but what is the difference between the two, or is there any difference between the two?
That's a great question, Tino.
Was that rhetorical?
Like, one thing about this I'm considering or wondering, is this like discussion in the sense of everyone joins in, or is it like?
Yes, it's
okay.
open. Yes, for sure. And you know, it's definitely open for sure. Yes.
No, right.
We're going to take the spaghetti and throw it as hard as we can against the wall and see what sticks.
Amen.
So just like in Italy, just toss it.
Yeah. So for example, like, you know, if you look at like, for example, if you look at like Romans 9:29, or Romans 9:11, or Ephesians chapter 1 verses 9 through 11, or the famous one we always use, Ephesians 3:11,
Mm-hmm.
eternal purpose of God. Those verses use the word purpose. And these are big, wouldn't you say, Josh? These are like big, heavy hitting verses.
Oh yeah, these are huge.
You know? Yeah, these are like the umbrella verses. They're the kind of verses that pretty much cover everything that's going to happen in the Bible, and they use there. And even Ephesians 3:11 calls it the eternal purpose, meaning this has always existed. It precedes all time, and it will endure all time. But another big heavy hitting verse is Revelation 4:11. That one is like the umbrella verse for the entire universe. It basically explains to you like why everything in the universe like exists, right? Revelation 4:11 is like the why verse. Like, here, let me tell you why the universe exists. A lot of people want to know like how the universe came into being. It says, well, let me tell you why it came into being. So Revelation 4:11 doesn't use the word purpose though; it uses the word will.
Wow.
Because of your will, they were and were created. You have these two words that you got will and you got purpose. I think the first thing is, and these two they're the same. They mean the same thing. God's will, God's
yeah.
right. There's other words. God's plan, God's arrangement, administration. They mean the same thing, right? But the Bible does specifically use these two words. So I think the first point I like to kind of for us to consider is why these two words? What's the difference between them? And to me, I've always considered part of my thought, and you know, I kind of just want to put this on the table and then just, you know, see how you brothers would like to go, you know, take this with it. But to me, the word will has more kind of like desire behind it. You know, like personal desire. Like I will have this. You know, I will come and see you.
Yeah.
This, you know. I will graduate by so-and-so. I will be a millionaire by the time I'm 30.
Yeah.
You may say, I purpose to be a millionaire when I'm 30. I will be a millionaire when I'm 30. You see the two? I mean, they're both stating the same thing. There's a plan to be something at some point. I purpose to be a millionaire. Okay, I get that. When I say, I will, or my will is like an intense desire behind it, right? More of a feeling behind it. And to me, I think that's important because you take like Ephesians 1:9, for example, and the word, you know, good pleasure according to his heart, right? How does 1:9 go? Here.
I got it right here.
Okay, go ahead,
Make,
bro.
making known to us the mystery of his will according to his good pleasure, he purposed in himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So you got will, you got good pleasure, and purpose.
hmm
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. And there, and in that verse, yeah, I like that verse, Josh. That verse is like, you see that God's purpose isn't some kind of like sterile plan to do something or to have something, but it's connected emotionally to God.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
It's, you know, there's like, you can say there's a longing within God to obtain something.
It's good.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I feel like when we get on this like whole subject, it's really easy to read the Bible and have a disconnect between that there's a being, a person with like a heart, and something that they want. But then, especially when you come to the book of Ephesians, I always kind of like to say it's kind of like where God, you've come into his inner chamber and he's ready to open his heart. And there's these
Yeah.
words that you don't see in other books, like Romans, like good pleasure and will
Mm-hmm.
and purpose. And I like that I like that we're talking about this, that it's, if you ask me, well, what's God's will? And you ask me what's God's purpose, I'll probably tell you the same thing, because you can't separate them. But when we talk about this distinction, it does really help, because when you were just saying that, when someone says I will, that means to me they've had some consideration, they've ruminated about it, there's been counsel, and they've considered the cost this will take, and then there's like resolution.
Yeah.
Like I will.
Yeah.
This is my will.
Yeah.
It won't change. And when God says I will,
Yeah.
it's a pretty serious thing, because
It's pretty serious. That's, you know, yeah, that's, I'm glad you said that word, because to me, the word serious really comes to mind.
Yeah.
Someone says, I will, whatever. You're like, oh man, this guy is serious.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And then you kind of also think he's probably going to do it. You know what I mean? It's like, this is not like, to him, it's not a question. Like, I'm, you know,
I will make myself like the Most High.
yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's a very serious intention. And it's like, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, this is going to take place.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think of the word will, that's kind of what I think of, is like God has this very serious desire to carry out something. And as far as he's concerned, it's going to happen and it's going to be done.
Yeah. Exactly. So if there's a difference between, so when I think realizing that when God says he purposes based on a will. A will is something inside him. I'm sitting here. You can't tell that I've purposed anything, but the will is already there. It's inside him. But the purpose, it's like it's come out.
Yeah.
And it's starting to take form. And you can look at things that are happening. Yeah. And you're like, wow, this person's purpose is according to their will. Mm-hmm. So when God purposes, it's just as meaningful and unchangeable as his will. Whereas if I say, I feel like if I say, you know, I purpose to get my degree and to get and to eventually, be a, work in Congress, be in government, it kind of means I've set my future for this, but if it can be stopped, then it'll be stopped. Yeah. But God's his purpose and his will are inseparable, and it is God's will. Yeah. Yeah. I kind of, here's a funny example, and I don't suggest you brothers try this, but I think it would drive it home. Imagine if you like walk up to like a girl, you see a girl and you're like, oh, I think she's the one, right? So imagine if you walk up to her and go, sister, I purpose to marry you. I mean, don't do that, but okay, just take that right now. Just humor me for a minute.
All right. Okay.
Or you walk up to say, sister, I will marry you. It's a difference between the two. There is. It really is a difference between the two, you see me? And to me, like the will has a very emotional component to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's feelings behind it. There's emotion behind it. And it's intense. And so to me, like, Ephesians 1:9 says, making known to us the mystery of his will according to his good pleasure. You see, connect
Man.
will there to an emotional, if you're allowed to say that, right? An emotional component to God
Wow.
with pleasure, a desire for something that's satisfying, that brings in a feeling of happiness and satisfaction, right? So to me, like whenever I hear the brothers speaking, you know, and they use the word purpose and will, immediately, like it just like all these thoughts pop into my mind. And you know, purpose is like the plan, execute, let's go.
Yeah.
But the will is like, wow, like this is deeper, more personal. You know, like this is like now I'm touching the heart of God. The plan's like I'm touching the head of God. The will is like I'm touching the heart of God.
Yeah. I feel like even anytime you meet a person, you know, you're getting to know them and you're slowly getting layer by layer into who they are. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, you like to watch basketball. You like to eat that kind of food. You go here and you're like, okay, so, and you're kind of saying, okay, well, why? And you kind of ask questions to dig deeper. And eventually you get to something solid.
Yeah.
And when you touch a person's will, you
Yeah.
really touch, you know them. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't know all the ins and outs, idiosyncrasies of how they live, but you know what that person's about,
Yeah.
kind of what they stand for. You're like,
Yeah.
I've touched their will, kind of
Yeah.
what they stand for.
Yeah.
And there's something about that to know, to touch God's will like that.
Yeah.
Like you're saying there, and there's emotion involved.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. Give me 1 second here.
Sure. Yeah, that's you know, I've heard of a brother. I would never say who it could be because there may be others, but I've heard of someone who went up to a Christian girl and he said, "I will marry you one day." And you know, and actually, at least in this case, he did end up marrying her. And whether that, who knows, did that garner
It
her
works.
respect? I'm not.
No, that's like Babe Ruth. That's like Babe Ruth, you know, stepping up at home plate, yeah, and pointing to the left field.
Yeah.
It can work, but the percentage is pretty low, right?
It's more like you got 15% chance.
15%.
No, it's lower than that. It's lower than that. This is talking baseball
like-
here. I think it's less than a 1% chance that you hit a home run every time you go to the plate.
Yeah.
Well, if I do it 100 times, I mean,
But if you actually step up to the plate and do it, then man, you got everybody's mad respect.
yeah.
And so I mean, you know, when because we're fallen, our will is like a noodle. It you know, I will get an A.
That's such a good image.
It's like me in genetics. I will get an A. Jane got an 89.9.
And you know, then we get a B, but we're like, I'm happy.
Yeah.
But you know, even like just thinking in human stories, when you think of men who were of great resolve throughout history, like, you know, even there's movies and films on the pursuit of happiness, someone who, or athletes, you're like, and we don't say it, but we give so much respect and honor to that. We're like, even when the cards were against them, their will never wavered.
Yeah.
And you know, human wills fall short, but there's it's ours. Even someone think of the person whose will is so set, and even when everything goes against them, they never back down, and their will is unchanged. It's like a shadow of what God and His will is. I don't know if I realize how set when God says "I will," what that entails and what that means. I'm just kind of thinking out.
Yeah. So just real quick, one of the reasons why we probably need to look for another time to do this discussion on God having a purpose for Himself is this little guy right here. So you may hear him and Hall in the background, you know, because usually hopefully Krista, you know, I made the plan was for Krista to be able to watch him when I'm doing this, but since she's going to be teaching at 10:30, I am wonderfully stuck with him. So he's yes. So he has a strong.
Will watch the child. He
has a very strong will. He wants something. He's like, give me. So anyway, okay. So you may. So I apologize. You may hear him, booing and so forth in the background.
Mm.
Go break something. Okay, so then the other thought I had is because of Revelation 4:11. See, to me, I think Revelation 4:11 is like, okay, in the Reese chronological. Have you guys heard the Reese chronological Bible? You guys know what that is?
Nope.
So there was this Christian brother, obviously his name is Reese, and he decided that he wanted to know like what verse in the Bible occurred first in time, because the Bible is not written exactly in the sequence of when things happen, right? It's written according to a certain kind of book order. But I think, and Reese was a doctor, I think he wanted to know, okay, if I could like place the Bible in chronological order, what would be the first verse in the Bible? And so he thought, he studied it very carefully, and it took him quite a while to do this. Eventually he came out with a translation called the Reese Chronological Bible. And in his Bible, it does not begin with Genesis 1:1. So in the Standard Bible, the first verse would be Genesis 1:1. In his Bible, it is John 1:1.
Yeah.
Wow.
In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. So he realized this is the first verse in the Bible. This is the verse before any creation occurred. This is the verse that's just in eternity with God. And then after that, I think he had John 1:2. He was in the beginning with God. And then after that, he gets into Genesis 1:1. And in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? But I realize now probably it'd be more appropriate to put, even before Genesis 1:1, you should put Revelation 4:11.
Well,
Because Revelation 4:11 is the explanation for why Genesis 1:1 occurred.
Yeah.
Wow.
You see? And when people read Genesis 1, they're trying to figure out the how. Like, how did God make everything?
Oh yeah.
How did God create the universe? And Genesis 1 gives you a very limited set of information on how God made the universe. Right? It's an insufficient amount of information there. But really, you see a little bit of how God made the universe. Like how. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. Okay, how did he make the universe? He created it. God did it. He brought something into being out of nothing. So that tells you how. It doesn't give you all the details, just tells you how. But Revelation 4:11 gives you the why. Why God made the universe. Right?
Mm.
And the why usually it should always precede the how. The why is the source of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? And so when we look at Revelation 4:11, what we see is
Tyndall's breaking something.
at least it's not a hammer. Hi. Yeah, you're a boy, that's for sure. No different between him and Samantha. He plays with dainty stuff and like this and that. Tyndall just grabs something like, what does that do? Yeah, that's you. So to me, I think what's important about Revelation 4:11 is it's telling you that the overarching theme of God's entire creation, which is everything we know of, which is how the Bible begins from Genesis 1, the overarching theme that governs everything is God's will.
Mm.
You see that?
amen.
Before we even begin in Genesis 1, Revelation says, listen, you got to know the whole reason why there would even be a Genesis 1:1 is God has a will. Because of your will, they were and were, meaning they were brought into existence and they exist for your will. Existence is for your will. Not just that they were brought into existence, but that very existence, as they continue to, as the universe continue to exist, it is. So then what kind of, Josh, I've always considered from this verse is that basically the will of God permeates through not just the past when the universe came into being, but really as the universe continues to exist, it is under the umbrella of God's will, God's purpose.
Amen.
Right. And that it kind of makes me think, wow, that just puts God's purpose above everything that I can think of. It's the governing view for the entire Bible, starting from 1.
Wow.
Amen.
That's profound. To think that Revelation 4:11 chronologically could precede Genesis 1:1 and John 1:1. Yeah, and saying that, it makes me realize we as believers, so many of us we're content to read the Bible without ever answering the why. And the God's, to me, that's why God's eternal purpose is like the game changer and the umbrella that we need, because it answers every why. And we do get a lot of hows in the Bible, but we need that kind of umbrella over our not only how we read the Bible, but how we see ourselves as believers. That's just really good to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, we have favorite verses that we memorize. Obviously, probably the most famous one that Christians know is John 3:16. For God so loved the world. But I kind of feel like we should know Revelation 4:11 by heart. To me, it's why John 3:16 is there, right?
Wow.
It's why 1 Corinthians 15:45 is there. I mean, these verses that we tend to know, right, is why Matthew 6:33 is there. Seek ye first the kingdom, or the last Adam became a life-giving spirit, or John 10:10, you may have life, or John 1:14, the word became flesh. It's the reason why those verses we know that we have memorized that are there.
Wow.
So I think we should know Revelation 4:11. And I know in the ministry we use it a lot, but when I read outside the ministry, when a number of people talk about God plan or something like that, or God's plan, whatever degree they discuss, I see a lot of people use Revelation 4:11.
You said you do see other people use 4:11?
Yeah, that's the one they use. They tend to use, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Man.
So I think we should make it a goal to by next week have Revelation 4:11 memorized.
Yeah.
I would say this, I prior to maybe a couple years ago, I don't feel like I used it enough. I was always the standard, right? Ephesians chapter 1, Ephesians chapter 3, Romans 8, Romans 9, eventually even 2 Timothy, chapter 1, verse 9. I mean, those were the standard verses I went to. But I seldom use Revelation 4:11. But to me, it is such a big verse.
Wow.
It's the verse that dictates the beginning of the Bible, because the Bible is Genesis 1:1. And here's the verse that says, hey, before you read Genesis 1, let me tell you why. Genesis 1 says, here's the beginning. And from this point on out, the story begins. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1 goes, here's how the story began. This is like the once upon a time line in the book. And Revelation 4:11 comes in. Yeah, before you get to that one, here's the preface. Here's the foreword. Here's the prologue. this is the point of this book. The preface is like, here's the point of this book. I know there's a whole story in this book. Here's the preface that tells you this is actually the point of this book. And that's Revelation 4:11. So maybe
Wow.
a good way to a neat way to say it, Revelation 4:11 is like the preface of the Bible.
So Tino, would you say that means like even to properly read the Bible, we need in a sense have to put on like Revelation 4:11 glasses, and then you starting in
Whoa.
Genesis 1 rather than just starting Genesis 1 and saying, okay, how should we interpret this? Or how am I going to read this?
That's right. Yeah.
But
Definitely.
through the lens of the author.
Yeah. And I'm really glad you said that, Josh. So when you put on the lens of the author, and the lens of the author says, hey, I am the author. Book is about my purpose. Okay, think about that for a minute. When you're reading a book, because commonly, like when you read the Bible, you're reading it, you think the Bible is written mainly about you.
Yeah, to the most
Right?
part, yeah.
The Bible tells me I'm a sinner, tells me I need Jesus, tells me what's going to happen to me, tells me where I came from, who created me, and so forth, and where I'm going to go after I die. There is this common cultural understanding and practice that when people read the Bible, it's a book about them. It's written about them. It's information I need to know for myself. But Josh, how did you say it? Put on the...
I just said it seems the way you were saying that to me, I was getting this picture of to properly read the Bible, to put on the lens of Revelation 4:11 lens to first start answering the why rather than getting into our almost like we come up with our own why. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
what's your why of the Bible? Oh, that's interesting. What's your why of the Bible?
You're right. And that's exactly it. And the Bible goes, oh, no. Before we get to your why, let's talk about God's why.
Wow.
And so the initial concept turn of the Bible is to turn us from thinking the Bible is about us. Actually, first and foremost, the Bible is about God.
Oh wow, amen. I really enjoyed that. So it's like the whole Bible is written about God.
Yeah.
The center part, the whole Bible is about God Himself.
Yeah, the Bible is about God. It's the subject of the Bible is God.
God's
The book is about Him, not about us. The reason why we there is because God has a will.
Mm-hmm.
So the Bible, the correct way to see the Bible is written concerning God. And I remember one of the Genesis Life Study, I think it was in the very first Genesis Life Study. It says, there's a question asked, what is the first subject of the Bible? Have you heard that question? Hey, didn't you, Isaac, didn't you read Genesis Life Study?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, bro.
What is the first subject of the Bible?
According to the life study of what is the first subject of the Bible?
Yeah.
Lord Jesus. Going out from 4 or
It's
5.
an easy but a slightly tricky question.
Right.
I can't believe you got a ministry book.
First subject of the Bible.
First subject of the Bible. If you get this right, Austin will give you a $10 gift card.
Thanks, Austin.
Whoever gets it first. First subject that the Bible unveils to us. The first subject of the Bible.
Hold on. Let me go to my LSM.org app.
Hold on, Will.
Let me go to my publishing.
Well, hold on.
Life study of the Bible.
I study of Genesis.
Bro, don't.
Is it like the first subject of the Bible? Maybe
Yeah, bro.
Subject wrong.
Oh, wait. I got it.
Will, hold up. You're gonna. This is Isaac's $10.
Steal your thunder, bro.
Bro, can't Google it and then claim the 10, bro.
Bro, we got it.
Bro, yeah. Nice.
What you got, Will?
So okay, yeah, hit it, Will. Hit it, Will.
Okay. Oh, well, it's a book of life. That's the Lord for life. Oh no, I'm reading.
What's the first subject,
I'm reading.
Will?
Okay. It is.
Live? What?
You're skipping out on the question.
Will, you're lying to us.
No.
I just read the first sentence. I read the first sentence.
Well, I mean, the
Well,
first subject is
Can we hear
creation,
some
isn't it?
guesses?
It's not.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Nah.
That's. I think I would have said the same thing. I would have exactly the same answer you guys. That when people read the Bible, like flip to page 1, what's the very first thing the Bible talks about? And my natural answer, same as yours, is creation. It's not. And if you look at the text, it's not.
God created
In the
man.
beginning,
Yep.
So go back to Genesis. Go back to the first sentence of the Bible.
in the beginning,
Textually.
God created
Oh.
the heavens and the earth.
Yeah.
Is it eternity past?
No.
Nope.
No, that's John 1:1, Matt.
Is it just God?
Ding, ding, ding.
It's God. Oh yeah, nice.
I was
God
thinking that.
himself.
Fourth
It's a
word of the
subject.
Bible.
In the beginning, God.
Was
In the
in the
beginning, God.
beginning.
God.
The first character. Bros,
Uh,
that means, okay, I wish bookstores did this. When you go to a bookstore, a library, they have the fiction area, the
Yeah.
historical novel.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
if you go into, a bookstore and you're like, you want to find a Bible, of
Yeah.
course you're going to, I'm going to go to, they're like, go to religious text. But I
Yeah.
think I would love to see a bookstore who says, oh, you want to see the Bible? That's actually in our biography section.
That's
Wow.
good.
Yes.
Wow,
That'd be great.
bro.
That's right. We should tell them. Hey, you need to go put the Bible in the biography section.
Yeah,
Or the
wait, I got you.
nonfiction.
I got you. I'll go do a book.
Mm.
Rearrange all the books.
All right. Go to Barnes and Noble. Barnes and
Yeah,
Noble.
We're
I
in our
doubt
actual
they're
home.
essential.
Just get paid to go do it in front of a judge. You get judged.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to type an essay on rhetoric right now. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, bros. So, other characters. There's other themes. Creation comes in.
Yeah.
That is
Man.
just that.
Mm.
That to me is such a It seems so simple. It seems like almost like a Sunday school lesson that the Bible is written by God. The Bible is about God. But the way we as our human nature gravitate to put ourselves as a story in the center of the story and read it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get to certain parts of the Bible, you're like, wait, ooh, this is not good. This is suffering. Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like this part.
Yeah.
And, you have all sorts of people have their own Bibles in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, creation is about us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Creation is about us. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and we're the creatures of creation.
God wants to get married.
Okay.
That's fair.
But before the word create, there's the word God.
Wow.
So it's really easy to see that the Bible is about us, because when we read it, he said, in the beginning, God created. And we just immediately go to the verb.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And we skip right through the noun, the subject of the verb, right?
The subject.
Yeah. That's true.
Lord.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Wow.
And so even the proper way to be aligned, even if you don't go, even if we don't take the direction of Revelation 4:11, the proper way to be aligned, just reading Genesis 1:1, if we just read it properly, we should be able to be aligned that it start with God.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
He is starting to walk.
Tyndale.
oh, is he?
Yeah, he just started yesterday. He stood up and didn't hold anything and balanced for like a few seconds, and then sat back down. And we'll do it again and again. And then today he wants me to hold my hand. He wants to okay, Dad, pick me up and let me walk.
If you hold him, will he take a step?
Yeah, yeah. I've been trying to do that. The previous week he went, but today he's like, "Hey, hold me so I can walk."
Disgusting.
So I think 2 days ago, I told Krista, what's your over under? Like I like 10 days. I like you think over under he'll walk in 10 days. You go, oh, over. And
Hey,
I think it'll be under.
you should put a calendar and everyone picks a date for to win the jackpot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm picking.
Look at you.
Okay.
Look at you. Hi.
I'm picking Saturday.
Choosing late.
Hey, bros, I'm
That's
really
just like accelerated.
bros. I'm really glad we can have this time.
Amen.
And if you notice, we're not
Yeah.
zooming into all the verses,
Yeah.
all the biblical and scriptural support for God's will. But I hope, like, with our friends and especially with other Christians, we learn like all sorts of ways to converse about.
Once I'll be back.
It's almost like before we scripturally unleash. We first like using philosophy and just almost like rhetoric but we talk to people about their why, their reason.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a lot of unbelievers for sure, they have a real hard time giving you a why, like why it all happened or why they live. And even with believers, if you keep pressing with why, anyway, it just a lot of I think, and if I'm not, I need Tino to help, but when I've stood in with Tino on a few of his appointments with students, it's like one of the first things when you start pressing with why, and even with this view of the Bible, is you help someone realize that there is a why. And like, I've actually never even considered that God had a reason.
Yeah.
And to learn to talk about it like this way with people it changes my life.
Yeah.
Someone talked about the Bible with me, like to consider the author.
Yeah. That's really good. I like that point a lot, Josh. And I think this topic is the kind of topic that really requires kind of like the why discussion, especially, not just to fully appreciate it and to be able to dive into it, but to help someone really open up and be able to consider it. I think taking a why discussion is very important, and not just let me just show you the verses and here's where the verse says this. You really have to talk about the why.
That's great. Yeah, it's for sure. And that I think I had that was the first time. I think Tino even came out and said, I don't know if any of you brothers have ever been in an appointment where he's done this, where he's like, I'm not going to tell you what God's will is, but you're going to know by the end of this appointment that God has a will, and you might not be so clear about what it is. In fact, you don't even know it. And almost like that's kind of like you create hunger pains before giving them the filet mignon. You bros ever heard this saying that for a chef or a cook, do you know what the number one spice is to make a food taste good? The top spice
Salt.
a chef can use?
Salt.
Salt? No, it's not salt.
The Tony Chachere's.
Chachere's. No. It's the top spice that any chef can use to make their food desirable is hunger. If you're hungry, I mean, a burnt piece of fish is going to taste like a filet mignon. If you're hungry after like a 6-hour hike, a power bar tastes like the best thing you've ever tasted. All the salt and sugar. And so, I think Watchman talked about being a good salesman with the word. A good salesman first creates a sense of hunger and desire in the person they're talking to before they ever present kind of their goods. And it's like, what God, you're right. I don't know what. I'm glad we can talk about this though, and learn how to kind of reason with people and talk about it in a way that can create hunger.
Amen. Amen. I really enjoy that. It's like when we're talking about the Bible to people, it's like we're like we're once dead, but now we're alive. But then like people in the world, they're dead. So we gotta like create like a desire in them. That's why Jesus said we should be like the salt and light.
Amen.
Because
Hey,
salt is what makes things taste good.
Oh yeah.
Well, brothers, I was thinking, I really enjoyed today's discussion. I felt like we had a really fun and good beginning.
Amen.
If you brothers feel good about it, I think Josh and I would like to continue along this line next week and continue exploring more of this topic in the Bible. So we'll probably need to, Josh and I probably need to kind of figure out a good time to continue this. It may be in, I don't know, Josh, it may be, sometime early in the day, or maybe I heard somebody said, why not later in the evening? So we'll just see, but we'll send out an update for you brothers next week to let you know when we'll have the second program to talk about God having a purpose for himself.
Sounds good.
Great.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Wait, who's this Together Plus person?
It's us together plus. No, that's the room. That's the Zoom room that we're in. It's called Together Plus.
Oh, okay. Jesus is getting us together.
Amen. Us.
Amen. Well,
All right, bros.
we just found some verses on rhetoric in the Bible. Yeah, did I have a verse on rhetoric? Like in the Bible, like the first verse that I thought of was like 1 Corinthians, chapter 1. Yeah, I took out this essay.
There's a Bible verse that says, "Let us reason together."
Wait, where in the Old Testament?
Yeah, somewhere in the Old Testament.
I'm on them.
I think Isaiah.
Yeah, I think God said that. Let us reason together.
If I want to reason, I want to reason with God. I'm gonna write it.
All right, Will. I'll see you, Tino.
Okay.
I gotta head to my other appointment. Bye, brothers.
Okay. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, brothers.
Yeah. See ya.
See you next week.
See ya.
Okay.